So I'm actually quite shocked. I was gonna skip the Pixel 9 Pro Fold because I didn't really see any reason to pick it up. It's expensive, it's still only a second generation device, and I never had any hands-on with the original Pixel Fold because it wasn't released in Canada. But this Pixel 9 Pro Fold, it's not a joke, and this is actually my daily driver now. So let's get into it. So I've been using the Pixel 9 Pro and the iPhone 16 Pro Max. This was nice because I had this seamless integration with my MacBook. It was perfect for social media apps and the performance was great, and the image quality within apps was also really nice to have. And then the Pixel was just my go-to because it was a really fun device. It was smooth, it was snappy, it was reliable, and I very much prefer Android Auto over CarPlay, and the Gemini features on the Pixel 9 Pro were just as much of a tool as they were a gimmick. It was really nice to have. Like, they were actually useful to me, whereas with the iPhone, Apple Intelligence still feels like it's not fully fleshed out and like it's still in beta. But this, the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, it replaced both for me, and I'm not kidding. Anyways, before I tell you more about it, I just want to say thank you so much for the support that you've shown me on this channel. I really cannot thank you all enough for having the ability to do this as a full-time job, and then going into the new year. It's January 1st today. There's just a lot of things that are coming up that I wouldn't have been able to do without all of you, and I'm just very appreciative, and thank you so much. So if you're watching this, a like and sub is always appreciated. You've allowed this to happen. Okay, so for a device to be good for me, it has to check 3 boxes. The fundamentals. I'm talking cell reception, call quality, and it has to have good speakers and cameras that are okay and easy to work with. It also has to have a really good battery life and a bright display. There's no compromise for those 2 things. The next is build quality. I'm not saying that it has to be made out of titanium, but it's gotta at least live up to what I put it through. High quality glass, premium materials, and if I'm buying a flagship, I also want it to look the part. And I also just don't want a bunch of micro scratches coating the display. And now you're gonna say, well, why don't you just use a screen protector? As if I haven't thought about doing this before, or at least as if I haven't done it in the past. The reason I don't actually end up using a screen protector or a case a lot of the times is because when I'm using my phones to film and I have an ND filter on my camera to film outdoors, it creates a really nasty glare and it makes the display unreadable and also just very ugly on camera. And then as far as the case, the reason I don't use one a majority of the time is because when I am filming, I want to show you guys what the devices actually look like and what you'd expect when you buy them off of a shelf. And it's very annoying to take the case off and put it back on, especially with a foldable device where cases usually require some sort of adhesive. So a lot of the times cases and screen protectors aren't really something that I use unless I'm not home and I'm traveling. And lastly, and I think this is the biggest thing for me, the phone has to be fun. To stay in my pocket, there needs to be something that makes it exciting. Whether that's something practical, like an impressive camera layout with wicked zoom ranges, a bigger screen for games or productivity, or just have a little bit of charm in it. Now, the Pixel 9 Pro hit everything for me, and I didn't really want to switch off of it, but there's a reason why I'm moving to a foldable as my main device and my only device, and there's a reason why it's also a Pixel. On first impressions, I was actually blown away with the Pixel 9 Pro Fold when I bought it the other week. It was my first time holding it in the hand, and I got to appreciate a lot about it. Firstly, in hand, when it's closed, it's got nearly the exact same footprint as the Pixel 9 Pro. The display is 6.3 inches, but it's a slightly lower resolution. It's 2700 nits, still OLED, still 120 Hz, and honestly, it looks really good. Now, the phone is 10.5 millimeters thick, which I would say is more on par with other devices inside of a bulkier case. So in the hand, it doesn't actually feel as bad as you might think for a foldable. And I would say actually one-handing and using this device, it's very comfortable for me. It's very easy to navigate as well when folded as far as folding phones go. And I don't think this display is a compromise. In fact, it's actually very good and I don't have any real complaints. Now, unfolded, it's 5.1 millimeters thin, which is wicked thin. And the inner display is massive. It's 8 inches, it's 120 Hz, HDR10 Plus, also has a 2700 nit peak, and it's a 1:1 aspect ratio, meaning that it's more of a square, or it is a square. Now, I will get back to the aspect ratio a little later on in the video, but I do want to make a couple of points quickly. I have used foldables for a while now, and I've always switched off of them because I felt like I was giving up more than what I was gaining. Say smaller battery, worse cameras, weird aspect ratios that aren't great for content consumption, the added bulk and weight, and most importantly, the cover display. Using this Pixel 9 Pro Fold as a phone, well, it's so seamless that I forget at times that it's a foldable unless I really need it to be. And I know that there's devices that are thinner and lighter, and in Canada, our only options are really from Samsung and OnePlus. And so from what I've used with the Fold 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, and the OnePlus Open, I'm heavily preferring the Pixel Fold for a lot of reasons. And it's also just been, like I said, the most comfortable foldable that I've experienced and seems like the most practical to me in my day-to-day. So for starters, what do I like about it? Now, I've said this many times, and it's the reason why I actually ended up opting for the Pixel 9 Pro as my daily, but the Pixel experience is fantastic. The whole UI feels very good. It's smooth, it's snappy, and I like the playful look. The phone doesn't take itself too seriously, where at times, I feel like with other devices, they're laid out, at least out of the box, in almost a surgical manner. This is fun. It's rounded, it's bouncy. The default widgets like the weather widgets are just obscure, and I just like the overall experience when using it. The app drawer is in your face, it's alphabetical, it's really easy to find what you're looking for, and the lock screen is simple. Notifications and the way that they're delivered are normal. They're not grouped chaotically or summarized like the iPhone in a way that makes no sense. And I'm an even bigger fan of how Google handles the home screen and the cover screen, despite going into this with heavy reservations. Look, setting up a phone, making it look clean, and being practical is fun, but when you do it as frequently as I do, it becomes a real pain point. And the Z series can be a hassle because your cover display and your inner display are independent out of the box. The way it works on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, one half of your inner display is one page on the cover display. So the right side of the first screen that I see on my inner screen is the second page on the cover, meaning that the way that I arrange my foldables anyway actually lines up perfectly with what it's gonna be out of the box on the cover screen. Like, my first screen is always blank, and the second screen is more frequently used applications like weather. Third and fourth become less frequently used apps, but still necessities, as well as my calendar and Google Tasks. When opened, that frequently used apps page is right where my thumb would be, and I can see and reach every application immediately without a problem. Sure, a little more customization on Google's front would be appreciated. I mean, that's kind of something that I come to expect and really like with Android, but I'm not gonna lie, personally, I don't actually see anything on this device that I would want to change. What's cool though is that when I'm on my cover screen, I have folders for my lifestyle apps, which is banking, mail, etc., my phone and messages app, and then a folder with my socials. But when I open it up, I gain 2 more spaces, which now can be used for Proton Mail for my business email, and X since they're my most used applications, and then once again push closer to my thumb for easy access. And by default, things like the keyboard are split when unfolded, and it's using Gboard. Now, this is the exact same setup that I'd use on any other foldable, since I don't really like the default Samsung keyboard. And as far as the Pixel 9 Pro goes, as well as any other Pixel devices, I use Google services for everything: music, maps, mail, YouTube. So having a phone built around the services that I use feels way more complete to me than something like the iPhone, where I use those Google applications anyway. Now, unfortunately, it's not all perfect though. Just like everything, there is some sort of a give and take. So let me get some negatives out of the way with the Pixel 9 Pro Fold before I continue to just drool over this device. It only has 21 watt wired charging, which is slow. It's a 4650 milliamp hour battery, so it is quite reasonable, but it does take a while to fully charge this device. It's also just ridiculously expensive. Like, this is one of the most expensive phones in Canada, for $2,400 for the 256 gigabyte model that I have, and 2,570 Canadian dollars for the 512 gigabyte. Now, it does also only have UFS 3.1 like other Pixel devices, which is less efficient and much slower than UFS 4.0 storage. And on a phone that's this expensive, I actually do not feel like this is something that should be compromised. I don't really bring this up when I talk about the other Pixel devices, because to me, truthfully, UFS 4.0 and 3.1 don't actually make a difference in my day-to-day performance, and in the applications that I use, I love these devices with the G4. That being said, I think at almost $3,000 after tax, yeah, it's a little egregious, and I think that Google really should be implementing the new and best features for these devices because of not only their cost, but it would also just be nice to see them compete on like a level playing field. Now back to the whole Tensor G4, it is obviously still using the Tensor G4, which is not the most powerful or mind-blowing SoC. Now these things that I've mentioned are the only real drawbacks to this device for me personally, and that's only really when you consider the price. Realistically, this is a fantastic phone. Performance feels like flagship, it's built like a flagship, and as far as actually using it goes, the Pixel 9 Pro Fold is a flagship device. It's just that there is better, and we could have had it, which would have only pushed this device further into the realm of like untouchable for me. Anyways, why a foldable though? Like that's a pretty big change going from, you know, a Pixel 9 Pro and then also carrying an iPhone on the side. And that's a good question. Now, this is a little more complicated than just, you know, giving you a flat out answer, but it ultimately boils down to not wanting to carry two specific devices. And I also just have a flexible job and I need a device that's flexible for me. I do content creation full time, and in January, I will be spending a lot of time traveling. So I wanted to cut down a bit and focus on the things that are essential to me. I'd been using an iPad mini as a portable camera monitor when on the go, but this can do that. Arguably not the same aspect ratio, but it is far better because the wireless connection to the camera from the phone is more reliable. The OLED display is far brighter, it's more color accurate, and I will also always have this on me, in turn meaning I always have a camera monitor. Being able to split view two applications is also great, something that I've missed deeply since switching off of a foldable, and it allows me to say schedule CES and add everything to my calendar whilst referencing the dates in my email. Now, it's also great for photo editing in Lightroom because it's just a large, bright display and it's super easy to work with. And it's also just great as like an on-the-go teleprompter if I'm sitting in a hotel room or don't have my laptop with me and need to read my script. This is just a much larger display so I can keep it out of frame and make the text bigger. So it's just doing a lot for me that other phones don't necessarily do or have the ability to do. I also like watching videos on it whilst I'm doing something else or laying in bed. Being able to rest the phone on a table but prop up the display for viewing is nice. And if I was to go from carrying two devices down to one like I am, I would want it to be worthwhile and be something that does more than just the typical phone. So that's why I chose something like this, which is more beneficial to me in my day-to-day. Now, this doesn't mean that the Pixel 9 Pro Fold is perfect or even perfect for me. I do a lot of social media stuff, obviously, and the cameras, they're just not amazing. Now, they are good, don't get me wrong, and I'm happy with it, but it does fall apart a little bit in dimly lit environments. The 48 megapixel wide is fine. Given good and even lighting conditions, it is a good lens. Now, the 10.8 megapixel and 10.5 megapixel lenses, they're just there, I guess. Like, they're not amazing. Now, I don't want this to come off snarky and like I was just expecting a whole lot more or whatever, but the truth is I just haven't spent an insane amount of time with these cameras, and it's also just been very gloomy outdoors because it's winter here. So I haven't really had like the best and optimal ways to test these cameras. So when I go to Vegas in a couple of days, I'm gonna be filming a week in the life with the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. And in that video, I am gonna test the cameras a lot more thoroughly, and I am just gonna let you know what I think about them after spending that week with this device. So if that's something that you wanna see, if you wanna go ahead and leave a like and sub to the channel, also consider turning on the post notification bell for that video when it becomes live. I would really appreciate it. And now back to what I said about the aspect ratio. Well, for videos, because of the square display, you're left with pretty big letterboxing. Granted, it's still a quite large screen for content consumption, but it's not the largest, and it kind of takes away some of the magic, but I'm actually preferring this because of what I gain with this form factor. And as for the battery goes, so far so good. Getting through a day, no problem with heavy use, so thumbs up for that. And I'll have more detailed numbers when I do the week in the life, safe, but I don't think that this is going to be an area of issue at all. And anyways, just so we're clear, because I feel like people see these videos and they get angry about it because I'm switching to this and I'm switching to that. The iPhone actually does have a sell order from it. I'm selling it to Go Resell, and it's paying off the old contract that I had with a cell provider because I just want to cut down the cost of my bill. So yeah, I'm actually replacing the iPhone, and this is actually becoming my only device. Obviously, there's phones that are coming out in the future, which I will be checking out. If you know, you know. I've been using this since Christmas Eve. It's been over a week now, and I've had a really great experience with the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, and I've been blown away. So I just hope that it doesn't let me down this January, because I will be gone for like the half of January. So I'm kind of worried, but I don't think that I have anything to worry about. So stay tuned for those videos. I will be, working on them as soon as possible. And I just want to say thank you once again for the support. Happy New Year. It means a lot that you've supported me throughout this year. And if you've watched all the way through, go ahead and drop a firework emoji down in the comments down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.